All right, I think we're live on Facebook. We have some folks with us in the Zoom call here. Welcome to this week's Ask Us Anything. I am Greg Prickrell, one of the co-founders of career.pm. I am joined by my partner, Daniel Zacharias.
Hey guys.
And no relation, I am joined by Lior Zadacario, who is an old friend of mine. He in the past has done business as Star Vision Partners, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yeah,
still has the
still.
firm. Yeah. Leo and I have developed courses together. We have gotten into fist fights in Berlin together, all kinds of crazy stuff. So welcome, Lior. So happy to have you. Lior has tons of experience in product management, all aspects of product management, and has done some mentoring as well. So happy to have you here, Lior. Anything you want to add to the?
Oh, just that my new phase is sort of focused on industrial IoT. This is
Cool.
one of my at least something that I'm very excited about. See how
Super cool.
technology is changing the manufacturing world.
Cool. We will be
Very
interviewing
exciting.
Lior soon for the podcast. So great to hear that. Let's
So,
jump right in. We take questions from our Slack community and from a Facebook group. When I post this in our YouTube channel, I will do my best to remember to post the links to those things. And maybe in chat, we can provide a link to our YouTube channel. But we take questions from folks ahead of time so we can prepare a bit. Feel free to ask questions during the session, and we will stay here as long as we can to answer them. So I'm going to jump in with one from Anna. And this is an interesting question. So, the theme for today was breaking into PM. I think this is kind of a new PM question. And the question is, how do we organize specs and data and tasks and stuff around a new feature or product that's in development? She's struggling to find the right platform. And I think to keep track of the status, a release can have a bunch of features. How should she think about keeping track of the status of those things? What do you guys think?
should I start?
Sure.
Go
That's
ahead,
an easy
Leo.
one because I don't have it's a great question because I don't have a good answer to it. It's quite the opposite from what we usually say. But I think that what we need to realize is that product management is really hard. It's not. I've looked at this over the last like 5 to 10 years several times, and I didn't find one tool that can have everything I wanted to have as like a high level. Someone who's looking both at the strategy, but also needs to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that the roadmap is there and the development is there. I couldn't find one good tool that does everything and is also easy to use. So I've looked at it, AHA, for example, and it had some good features, but the implementation was quite difficult. Uh, I have to say that, regrettably, I think that what I would use at the moment would be somewhere in the office space. So
Yeah,
Microsoft
that's
Office, I think,
interesting,
is the
Lior.
most popular still, even though, it's really not where I think we should be, but that's my experience.
Yeah, so we can think of classes of tools. So there are dedicated tools for PMs. Most of those are licensed, some of them are free. So that would be obvious. A ton of organizations use things like Jira, and they are designed to
Right.
do exactly what you want to do. If that's not possible, if that's not in your budget, you can find some cheap things. Like it depends on the size of your team. If it's small, you can probably just use a Kanban board. That's what I would do. If it's just one or two teams, and then of course you can use Google Sheets or something. I think all important information is in Excel, basically. So as long as other people have access, what do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think tools are the last bit of the you know setup that you need. I see people actually struggling a lot more with processes first, and So I would say that, going back to the standard cliche, but it's always true to me, people over processes over tools. And so that's kind of how I look at it. But going back to the tools question, I mean, I've managed very complex products with multiple teams, all on Trello. And you can
Wow.
make it work. It's just a matter of having the right, approach to it, and how to set it up, and how you connect all those things. But it does work. It depends on your workflow. But yeah, having said that, those generalist tools always, can be adapted. There are a few cool ones like product plan, product board, ProdPad. There are a roadmap. There are a set of road mapping and product management, like systems of record now coming up, which I haven't tried recently, and can perhaps be the key to this issue.
Cool. So check them out. I did some research a while back for a client and found that like Jira has a freemium model. I did not know that. So you can actually get pretty productive use. Find one, I think the important things are that everybody can see it. It cannot be this little like spreadsheet on your hard drive. You should pick the simplest tool. Like pursuing the perfect tool will take you forever. And, you're not in the tool business. You're trying to ship a product. So as Daniel was kind of implying, you fill in some of the white space with just practice and other communication and stuff like that. And just start using something. Start with a Google Sheet, start with a freemium version of Jira. And one other thing that I want to talk about quickly is, in my experience, all these product management tools, the one you mentioned, Daniel, are like, I consider them inward facing tools. They create roadmaps that are like Gantt charts, and it drives me nuts. I was in the B2B space. Customers don't care about how long I spend developing something. They want to know
Right.
when things get released.
Right.
So even though it's not cool and doesn't seem agile, some products still have release dates, and we're not
Yeah.
just continuously delivering. Customers don't want that. So if anybody's listening and has some sway there, I would love to see every once in a while these traditional milestone oriented roadmaps. I think it's a big gap.
Right.
Okay. The next question comes from the Facebook group from our old friend Nat at Go Practice. They have a really cool like PM training kind of simulation thing. Just go, that is a horrible description, but go check that out. And she asks a great question. What are the top 3 mind traps to avoid when transitioning to a PM job? So what are the kind of mental traps that we fall into when we transition from a different field? And Nat, I do not think you will just get 3 answers. But
Many traps.
guys, yeah, maybe I will start just to get the ball rolling. You can come at this from a lot of angles. This may seem obvious, but let's say you're coming from engineering. Clearly, the biggest trap is thinking about implementation more than the functional perspective of the product. So you've made your living figuring out how to build things, designing the implementation of products. That will kill you as a product manager because it just takes too much time. There are too many other things you need to do. So if you're coming from engineering, what I would say is you have to put on your functional hat. You have to think like a customer. You have to think about markets. And I went through this. I was a kind of architect and engineer when I became a PM. It was worse. I got hired to develop a bunch of tools and found myself doing a lot of the work myself. And it was just dumb. I failed at first because I couldn't let that go. So that would be one that I would think of. And a lot of PMs do come from an engineering background.
Yeah, I have a few takes on this. I think that one of the things you need to keep yourself, to keep reminding yourself of is that you're not the customer. Okay, a lot of times I think people would say, well, I wouldn't like it. And it's almost like you need to measure the distance, the cultural, social, distance between where you are and where the customer is, and to what extent do you really understand them. So I think a lot of times we would put ourselves, either explicitly or implicitly in the position of the customer and say, okay, I would like this, or and I would not like this. And really the thing is, like, really doesn't matter what you like. It really matters what the customer like and how you put the functionality in front of them. And I think that another issue, tying back to Greg, what you said, is the fact that being, if you're, I'm also I was a developer, that's my background. And I think a lot of times you really confuse what you need the system to do and what it means for the customer or for the user. So I think there's almost like a clear distinction that needs to be made between what the system does and what it means for the customer, for the user. And I think that's also something that can be very tricky. Something it's not, sometimes it doesn't really matter because it's the same thing, then it's fine, it's the same thing. But sometimes it's a big difference. So you just a slight different angle by looking at through the customer point of view. And also in one of the other backgrounds, I see a lot of people going to product management coming from like a UX background, and they just focus on UX. It's like,
Good
okay,
point.
it's only about the user experience. And I think there's a lot more to product management than just looking at the user experience.
So if you come from a product background, you're going to have to watch yourself closely so that you don't fall into what you're comfortable with. And there are a lot of uncomfortable things as a product manager. Right. So you have to really eat that frog every day,
Right. I would just add that to both your points, I guess, is that aside for it being a trap in the work that you actually have to get done, it actually also affects your relationship with the rest of the people that you're working with. So as a former engineer, you're not supposed to be discussing with engineering the details of implementation. It's and not trusting your team on delivering on that is a huge pitfall. The same goes for design, for user experience and all the other aspects to it. So our role is to communicate effectively, understand things from the market, and then be able to communicate that effectively in a way that the team then is able to execute on. And we're not supposed to be meddling with the details. But just from the relationship perspective is where I would put an emphasis on. Like you're building relationship with all these people. It will affect you on a different side of your job as well.
Yeah, so I would say, to summarize, if you're coming from a product background, or I guess any background, you have to be careful not to fall into doing the things you're comfortable with as opposed to the things that a PM needs to do. I think Lior makes an excellent point about over time, this is a subtle thing, getting a bit arrogant and thinking we really understand the users or the customers. You're not the user and the customer. The fact that you're building something for them changes your perspective. You are not going to think like they are. So it's really dangerous, even if you have experience and a lot of empathy for them. Something else that I would throw in there, this is counterintuitive when you become a product manager. Product is in the name. That's the kind of solution to a problem. But if you want to be successful, you have to be problem oriented. First and foremost, you have to understand the problems that you are solving. That's not sufficient. We're not problem managers. You also have to translate that into a description that can be implemented that makes the market happy and your management happy. But for sure, you should invest in, there's tons of information about problem solving. Design thinking is a problem solving methodology. There are a bunch of other ones. So don't do what's comfortable. Don't think you understand the customer, or remember that you are not the customer. And be problem oriented.
Can I just make one comment, just like a slight twist on this problem manager thing? I think that it even goes back to not being only a problem manager, but being a value manager, because I think a lot of times your customer does not think of your product as in terms of problem solving. Sometimes it is, but if you look at really something that's a breakthrough product, you can't think about it as if you're solving a problem. You're creating value where no problem existed before. Okay, this is something very, especially for like breakthrough products such as the iPhone, such as like video communication. You can think of Zoom, for example. I was very happy, with my phone calls before Zoom came along. And now all of a sudden I realized there is value in places where I didn't think there was a problem before.
Yeah, it's funny. I wanted to contact Leo right before this meeting, and I pinged him on Skype because years ago that's what we always used, but times have
Yeah,
changed for sure.
yeah.
So, Nat, I hope and that helps, and everybody else that's aspiring to be a PM. We have another question that was submitted before. Man, it doesn't get served up better than this. They wonder if we can suggest some online websites where newbies and seasoned PMs can learn. I mean, career.pm, of course, is at the top of our list, but there are a lot of them. They are proliferating. Some of the ones that I personally have looked at and like Product Alliance, I think is really good if you're looking to um, get experience in interviewing and searching for the job, especially like kind of consumer oriented FANG, type of stuff. I think they are great. I really like their founders, so I would look there. But I would say, they're proliferating. So shop around and find one that kind of resonates with you and try it. If it doesn't work, move on. But so career.pm clearly at the top of the list. If you're aspiring, we have a lot of stuff. We can put a program together where we do coaching, we can do mock interviews. I think we have a holistic solution, but there are a lot of sites that take off just parts of those problems. So search for them. They're out there, and find one that just resonates with you. Do your research. Anything you
All
guys would
right.
add to that shameless
So
plug?
I guess not. I think we have a couple more questions coming in um, via Facebook as well. We kind of addressed this. We mentioned it in our answers just now, but um, we can dig a little bit more into it. So Ron Gazarian is asking, how do you folks begin your career in PM?
Say
Sorry,
that again, Daniel. I'm sorry.
can you
How
hear?
did you folks begin your career as product managers?
Stumbled upon it. Or like I have to say something. I was a developer and a development manager, and I managed like dozens of people before I became a product manager. I worked for a company in the telecommunications space called Amdocs. We were a solution company, not a product company. And all of a sudden we figured out, that it was like just around the year 2000 when, the dot-com bubble busted, and with the company as a whole, which is like had like about just around 10,000 employees at the time, decided to go in the product direction. They were looking for who was going to lead that, and I was just there in the right place in the right time, and I had no idea what product management is all about.
Yeah, I got into some legal trouble, and they said it was either go into the army or product management. I'm still not sure I made the right decision. Here I
Well,
am.
it's not too late, Greg. There's
Yeah.
still the army
I
option.
was a developer, then a consultant doing more like solution architecture, and I was at IBM, and they bought a little German workflow company, and they needed a product manager to help design some kind of tools and templates around that. And I mean, this was back in 2000. Very few people knew what product management was. And I just fell in love with it. So that's how I got in. And I've never looked back. It's really what I'm passionate about still.
Yeah, yeah. I started as an engineer as well. Then I got hired for a role, kind of rolling out a new product across different installation sites. And after that project got done, then I got kind of became responsible for the product itself, and then a series of other products related to it. And so that's kind of like progressively stumbled upon the role as well. So that's kind of my own personal path.
Daniel, I want to ask a question because something
Sure.
occurred to me while we were talking about this. And that's, guys, like if you could change one major thing about your career, about the way you approached your career, right? We do career planning at career.pm because it occurred to me if I could change something, almost all my experiences in these huge software companies, IBM, Microsoft, SAP, and I think I got great experience. I loved it. But if I were planning my career today, I would try to move between domains and do some B2C stuff, do something that involves hardware. I think as I planned my career, I personally would like broader experience. What about you guys?
I agree. I think that for me, it's almost like it worked out that way by chance. You know,
Hmm.
my answer would be more towards the direction that I would try to structure my career from a more with a more methodological take on it rather than just go from one job to another. I have to admit, I didn't think about how things work out. I just whatever was there, whatever I thought was the right thing to do at a time. And I never really thought about it as a path to going somewhere. I think that's wrong. I think you need to
Yeah,
plan
we're
it out.
passive. We're very passive and kind of
Yes,
interrupt driven. When a
right,
company starts to go under, or we're just super unhappy, we
right,
look for something else.
right.
A pandemic
Exactly.
comes, and that is such a mistake. Uh, Treat
Absolutely.
your career like you would treat a product. Define goals and objectives, define a vision for some investment horizon, build a
Right.
little roadmap that shows where you want to go and what you want to do and manage to it.
Right.
Absolutely.
You're not getting off the hook, Daniel. What would
All
you?
right. No, I mean, I was thinking about it. I mean, I kind of always this is one of my pet peeves, like looking back and then asking, what if? And I don't agree with that premise, but anyways, moving,
So
trying to
that
answer
others
your.
might learn, Daniel.
Right. But I think so. As you were talking about the broader experience, I mean, I think so. Over time, I kind of got by chance very much involved in the urban mobility space. So, parking and transportation. And I actually, and that was most of what I did. And the depth of going into that industry was also something that I enjoy. And even when I do consulting, it's mostly related to that because I have a very deep knowledge about both the combination of the technology and that industry. So that is helpful. What I would have liked is perhaps addressing it from more angles
Mhm.
rather than just the subdomains that I was in, so that I could have a broader perspective around that industry as well. But perhaps more importantly, trying to, if possible, tie that back with being able to do more of people management and kind of do the
Mhm.
managing PMs rather than managing products.
Cool. So actively manage your career, treat it like a product, and think
Right.
very seriously about getting experience in different kinds of industries, different types of markets. Because when you get to, a later point in your career, that will really help you sell yourself. It's impressive to see somebody that's been successful in B2B, B2C, blah, blah, blah. So there you go.
Right. And it gives you also a broad perspective. I would add one more thing. Don't be afraid to pivot. I think
Mm-hmm.
that we, at least for my experience, my own personal experience, I've been too attached to things I've been doing. And I thought, okay, this is my career. I want to go in that direction. And it took me a long time to change direction, even if I was not happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point, Leo. I would just say that to kind of emphasize that thought is we're very privileged in the industry that we're working in, and like we can screw up a bunch of times and still land on our feet. Like there will always be tech to be developed. You can make better or worse company, but there's a need for people doing this kind of job. So we're privileged in that sense, and so that lowers the risk a lot
Absolutely.
in taking
Right.
in
Mm-hmm.
trying to pivot.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Are there more questions from the Facebook group, like live questions that have come in?
We had a right. So there's one from Etienne Leroy, I would presume. Um, right. I guess this is not about breaking into PM, but it's just come in. So let's try to tackle that
Cool.
one. How do you track your product team productivity or effectiveness in this remote world? I guess this goes back to the tooling question just before, but I think I kind of, to set it up a little bit differently, I would try to say that measuring effectiveness shouldn't be about, necessarily about the outputs, but being clear on what you're trying to achieve. So usually these tools, most of these project tools are around like executing on a little Gantt chart, and it's about a task execution, not necessarily uh, product execution in the sense of improving the business in some way. So effectiveness in reality, you should be measuring by that rather than other kind of output oriented uh, measures. So that's kind of my response to that. I think I wouldn't necessarily think that there's a change from the non-remote world to the remote world in that aspect.
Yeah.
I'm
How
not,
about
can
you
you
guys?
repeat the question? I'm not sure I
Right, like
understood
how do
it.
you track effectiveness for as a product team in a remote environment?
Okay.
Yeah.
I,
I think,
I,
it's not a tooling question. I think it's a people and process question.
Right.
And, I've always looked at stuff like Scrum as just a great way to manage work. It's not necessarily just kind of software project oriented. And I think in this remote world, you have to make an extra effort to sync, take on commitments. And I think in, most knowledge worker teams, we're paid to solve problems. It's creative work. So measuring productivity is usually pretty indirect. Like I would measure it in revenue or whatever your key product
yeah,
kind
right.
of
Yeah.
KPIs are,
Look at
but
the
you're going to have to
results.
make an extra effort. And I think in a knowledge worker team where you've hired the right people, transparency is enough to start forcing people to be as productive as kind of the group expects. So I think you need that transparency, and people know how long it takes to do XYZ. You know what I mean? People have an idea. So if we're transparent, it puts pressure on those things, and I've seen people deliver better. But it's always like some indirect measure, I think.
Yeah, and I would take it to the place that I would say that if your measurement or the type of things you measure are based on the fact that you need to have close proximity to the people that you manage, you have the wrong metrics. It's
Right.
not about seeing people work or saying it's about the results that they're able to create, and the results have nothing to do with the fact whether they're in the office or they're in some other
Yeah.
planet doing their work. So generally I would measure my product managers based on, are you able to set good targets for yourself, which is like good metrics? Where do I want to be? I call it the product objective board. Okay, so we have this board, and you have your targets there, and they're obviously timed, smart goals, if you like. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely.
Mm-hmm.
And just make sure that you achieve your goals. If your product achieves the goals, then you're fine. And if not, let's see what we need to change.
Yeah. Cool. Most impressive thing about Lior's answer is he actually knows what SMART stands for. Like I can never remember all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that also, the main thing about it is about it's be specific and measurable and timely. Achievable and realistic is just the same thing.
Cool. Do we have something else from Facebook, Daniel?
I don't think so.
Cool.
We
I wanted to address a question that comes up a lot when we are coaching aspiring PMs. I think this is the biggest challenge they face. And that is, how do I get experience when everybody who's hiring wants me to have experience before they will hire me, right? This chicken egg thing is really tough. So, man, there's no shortage of courses. You can position product related stuff you've done in the past, but especially in this market, if you don't have experience, it can be tough to break in. So what are some creative solutions to that, guys? How can folks approach that so they have something on their resume?
Um, I always says there's three major ways to do it. One is to start in a company that's small enough that you could do both, marketing and product management, engineering, development and product management, or actually transition from one to the other. So that's one option. So it's two different options. Either even if you're a big company, you can transition internally. I think that's an option. Or if you're in a startup, then basically most startups, you can take on the product management position if it's not already taken by someone else. I also think that you could get close to it based on, obviously you need to be in a high-tech environment. So, if you're a store manager and you want to be a product manager, then it will be difficult. So I think you need basically to start from the right environment. But there, either you have some very important expertise for the company that you're approaching. So if the company is doing architecture, and you have the exact experience that they have, and even if you're not a product manager, but you really have a good fit as far as your experience, and the customer and the environment, then it's a little easier to make that jump. So I think those are the three ways, either transition internally, go to a startup basically and get the experience there, or just get a place where your domain expertise are going to be so high that they're going to be able to hire you as a product manager, even if you don't have prior experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to add something to that, Greg. We just got in another one from.
I do want to add one quick thing,
right.
And that is side hustle, side hustle, side hustle. So learn something about product management. Even if you never take the product to market, go through structured product discovery, build a roadmap, build a strategy document, then put those in a portfolio and explain to people, hey, I pulled this group together. I had this idea. We didn't launch it, but I did deliver these things. So you can look at my strategy document, my roadmap. So it's better than nothing, and you will actually learn a lot. So I would add that.
And even I would even add, so that even for non-technical people, there are a bunch of no-code tools right now that could help you even have like a working software, a little bit of an app going on with zero code. So you can definitely even go onto end-to-end on that. All right, so we have one more question from Nikhil. If we have the time. So his question is, how does a new PM maintain time balance when it's crazy pool of their time from every team, especially in a smaller venture where PMs are wearing multiple hats? Greg, you want to go?
Great question. We always have time for Nikhil.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, right, if you're a successful PM, even if you're not, there are always going to be unrealistic demands on your time. So like everything else in PM, it's about priorities. You have to know what's going to make you successful and focus on those things. And usually what makes your product successful will make you successful. You have to socialize those things, and you have to learn to say no. So, we read about saying no in PM circles. I'm writing this blog post over weeks with another PM. I think I mentioned it the last time about saying no around your time. So it's important to tell stakeholders no about new features. We read about that. What's more important is telling people no about your time. When there's a request that just doesn't align with the priorities of the product, I would go so far as to say you should develop a reputation for saying no when it comes to your time. So prioritize, share those priorities. When people want you to come to things, say, look, I would like to do that, but we agreed that we're trying to achieve this month, and I just can't, I don't have the cycles. And maybe suggest an alternative. Why don't we send somebody from engineering? Or how about if you send me the document and I review it, or whatever?
Yeah, but I think the last part can get you in trouble. So if you're going to end up reviewing a lot of documents, you're going to be wasting your time.
That's true.
I want to say two things in this context. First, product manager is not the position that's going to land you to be the most popular guy on the floor, or in your company. If you're running for most popular person in the company, product management is not the part you want to be. Okay, because you're not going to be popular because everyone has their own idea. A lot of people think they can be product managers. A lot of people think they know what's best for the product. So it's very easy for them to come up with ideas, and it's really in a way it's your job to shoot down their dreams. Okay, especially for those people that are really putting everything they have into the product, but you're telling them this is not the direction we want to go to. So yeah, you're not going to be popular being a product manager. Also, I think there's another point here, and it ties back to what we discussed before about having goals. If you have goals, what you should do is try to get 90 to 95% of your time serving those goals. So you should really make a distinction between am I serving my goals? So it's not my goals, it's the product goals. So am I serving the goals of the product? And if I am, then good, this is what should be done. If there's a feature that serves the product goals, then great. And if it's not, then you don't do it, or you don't engage in this in this activity. I think one of the major problem is that, and I've seen this happen over and over again, you have these high-ranking executives that are sort of doubling as a product manager. You have this, in large organization, you have a VP or a CXO and sometimes a CEO going down to the product manager and telling him, I know what we want. This is the feature that we want. And they come out of nowhere with this without understanding the full process. So yeah, I think it's very difficult, but your metric or your distinct, you need to make a clear distinction. Is this going to advance my goals? Is this going to serve my metrics? And if yes, then yeah, we should consider doing it. If not, then sorry, next quarter we'll consider it again.
I think 90% of product management is prioritizing something. We prioritize lists. It's what we do. The other 10% is looking for a better job. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I love this quote that if you want to make people happy, sell ice cream. Don't become a product manager. And I think you raised a point, like you used kind of this brutal example. I worked for a guy one time who talked about we have to kill some of our puppies just to really make this point that we love these things that we want to do. Every once in a while, it's just not in our best interest to keep them all around. So you will have to change your mindset to probably be a little more kind of brutal, in not in the way you treat people, but in the way you triage requests for your times, and your default answer just has to become no. I know that's hard. But it's something you work on and get better at over time.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's that's it for the questions that we had.
Okay, I just want to add, I mean, I actually have just on this last point, just one more second. I actually think that a lot of times the best product managers are the people are at specific points in time can be perceived as the people who are most, creating obstacles, making things difficult, because we're talking about metrics and we're talking about, is this really going to help us as a company? And it's, people would rather, just take their hunches and build a product based on what feels good and not about real, a real process.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Good points, Lior. Thank you, Lior, so much for joining us.
Happy to
you
be.
can find out more about Lior on starvisionpartners.com. And I'm sure there's we will generate some of this content about the new stuff that he's looking into, this Industry 4.0 and IoT.
We'll show the links in both the YouTube channel, the YouTube video, and our podcast episode as well.
Yeah. Cool. So we'll see you in the next one. By the way, I think we're going to move to a bi-weekly rhythm. We'll do these every other week. So thanks everybody for the questions, for the participation. Thank you, Daniel and Lior, for being here. I really enjoyed it. Bye, everyone.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.